Hello fellow hunters, and welcome back to the channel. If you're looking for guides on all of the weapons from Monster Hunter Wilds, then you're in the right place. This and the other videos in this series are your ultimate how-to guide for each of the 14 weapons. All the basics, all the new moves, new mechanics, and what you should be doing to get started once Monster Hunter Wilds fully releases in February. Since the game is still currently in beta, keep in mind some of these things may slightly change, but go ahead and let me know down in the comments which changes you guys really like and which weapon you want me to cover next. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more Monster Hunter Wilds content. In today's video, we'll be going over the Switch Axe, also known as the Swag Axe. If you like versatility and flashy offsetting attacks, this weapon is for you. It's basically two weapons in one. It can switch between axe mode and sword mode with the click of a button. Similar to the charge blade, but slightly less complicated. The Switch Axe is great for players who enjoy a dynamic combat style with its perfect combination of long-reaching attacks and raw power. The main objective while using this weapon is all about managing both modes for certain scenarios. The more light, agile, yet still hard-hitting axe mode, and the heavy, slow, explosive sword mode. While the axe mode is better for long-range, sweeping attacks, it's perfect for hitting those hard-to-reach body parts. Sword mode is better for high damage, fast strikes, and big combos, but it does lack some mobility. Before getting into the base moveset, let's first cover the Switch Axe gauges. The gauge is fairly similar to the charge blade, but only in the sense that there are individual sections that will fill up by doing different attacks while in each mode. The top bar is called the Switch Gauge. This gauge fills up when you land attacks in axe mode. Once it reaches about 30%, you can switch to sword mode. If attempting to switch with less than 30% gauge, you will perform a manual reload. This is a very lengthy animation and holds you in place for a period of time, leaving you vulnerable and open to attacks, so it's recommended to avoid this if possible. The lower left section is the powered axe mode. When activated, it increases the damage of axe mode strikes and charges the switch gauge faster. A slight change in mechanics from previous titles is the switch gauge will no longer fill passively while in combat. You either need to continue to land attacks or completely sheath your weapon in order to build back this gauge. The amped gauge is on the bottom right. You can fill this gauge by landing attacks in sword mode. Once the gauge is full, you will enter the amped state, which adds file explosions to your attacks. These files deal significant damage to enemies and add flashy visual elements to your attacks. This mechanic encourages strategic play, as hunters can choose files that best exploit a monster's weakness. In World, there were 5 different file types, and we can assume that these will all return in Wilds once the full game releases. Now that you have an understanding of how the gauges work, let's cover the basic moveset. The default mode of the Switch Axe is in axe mode. Pressing Y will do an overhead slash, pressing Y again will do a side slash, and a third Y will do a new spiral burst slash. This new attack is a great way to build up switch gauge energy. Directional inputs can help you increase your mobility, while at the same time dealing damage. For example, holding forward on the left thumbstick and pressing Y will perform a forward slash, while holding backwards and pressing B will do a fade slash. These attacks are a great way to create space or close gaps during the fight without having to sheath your weapon. Continuing in axe mode, B will do a wild swing. This attack can be repeated by spamming B, but at the cost of stamina. Pressing Y while in the wild swing will perform a axe heavy slam. This will charge the axe gauge and put you into powered axe mode, indicated by the axe gauge section along with the axe head now glowing orange. Powered axe mode increases all axe mode attacks and improves switch gauge filling efficiency. In World, this attack would normally require a 3 swing rotation, but in Wilds it can be triggered after only 2. Pressing the right trigger while in the wild swing will perform a morph sweep. This does a lot of damage and will switch you into sword mode. Switching between modes can be done by just pressing right trigger, however it is much more efficient to loop morphs into combos. This way you can take advantage of the extra damage through the animation. These morphs can also change depending on the directional input and the mode that you're starting in. Holding forward and switching from axe to sword mode will do a more aggressive axe morph slash, while holding backwards and switching from sword to axe mode will do a downward fade slash, creating a bit of distance between you and your target. Switching gears to sword mode, you now have a brand new set of attacks and combos. Pressing Y will do an overhead slash, pressing it a second and third time will do right and left rising slashes. Pressing B will do a double slash, and hitting B again will do a heavenward flurry. This is a great combo to help build your sword gauge and get you into amped state. A trick to building switch gauge energy really quickly is by chaining the sword morph slash and the spiral burst slash. Starting in sword mode, pressing forward on the left thumbstick and hitting the right trigger will have you morph into axe mode. From there, you can press Y to go directly into the spiral burst slash. The spiral burst slash gives the most amount of switch gauge energy out of any of the axe moves. And doing it this way will allow you to skip the first two parts of that Y combo and help you to build switch gauge energy much faster. Now that we have covered the basic moveset and the general idea behind the switch gauges, we can now move on to more advanced moves and combos. The switch axe shares one of its counters with the greatsword. That would be the offset rising slash. But this time you have access to different follow-ups. Pressing Y and B together will perform the offset rising slash. The difference here being that this attack cannot be held or charged like it can on the greatsword. So learning to time this attack correctly will take some practice. But after connecting, you have the option to either follow up with the heavy axe slam or the morph slash. Speaking of counters, you actually have access to two. The first being that ORS, but the other is by pressing right trigger and Y. This will have you ready the sword back, and if hit while in this position, you will follow up with a rising counter strike. This is very similar to the way a guard point works on the charge blade. The switch axe is probably most well known for its explosive finishing moves, and the start to those is the element discharge. This attack can be done at any point in sword mode, whether you're in amped state or not. Pressing Y and B at the same time will have you thrust the sword forward and fire off a fire explosion. This can be held slightly longer by spamming the Y button during the animation. The upgraded version to this attack is called the Zero Sum Discharge. To do this, hold Y and B while next to a monster. You will clutch onto the monster, then perform a similar animation to the element discharge, but will finish with a much larger elemental explosion. In Wilds, the switch axe has cranked the flashiness up to 11, with new moves that help maximize damage output and lead to some very satisfying finishers. During the times that you're not in amp state, but you want a high damage move, you can now use the Unbridled Slash. This can be done by pressing right trigger immediately after an elemental discharge. However, if you are in the amped state, you can perform the same combo, but this time hold right trigger, and you will perform the switch axe's new, strongest and flashiest move, the Full Release Slash. This attack will use up all of your switch gauge energy, take you out of amped mode, and return you to axe mode when finished. Focus mode is a new mechanic in Wilds that allows for better manipulation of the camera and makes aiming different weapons much easier. It will also highlight weak points created throughout the fight in bright red. These are called wounds. The switch axe's special focus mode attack is called Morph Combination. This can be done while in either sword or axe mode. Toggling or pressing left trigger will engage focus mode. Then pressing the right bumper and landing an attack on a wound will have you swing the weapon back and forth, very similar to the wild swing attack, breaking multiple wounds and doing a massive amount of damage. You also have the option to follow straight up into a full release slash for an even stronger combo and a bigger finisher. Along with all the other weapons in Wilds, the switch axe also got a unique mounted finisher. After scoring a mount and wounding the monster, pressing the right bumper will have you do a zero-sum discharge into a wound, finishing with an extra large fire explosion, a backflip, and a very stylish superhero landing. But that is about everything for the switch axe, from the basics to all of the new moves and mechanics. Let me know down in the comments which change is your favorite, and don't forget to subscribe for more weapon guides for Monster Hunter Wilds coming very soon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Wolf, out!